A typical British infantry division numbered 15,500 men, but only 6,750 were frontline fighters. Such ratios were less marked in Japan and the Soviet Union, with desperate shortages of manpower for the front line, but the military establishment everywhere relied for the effective organization of combat on millions who were not fighting. As in civilian society, the military needed specialist skills or the ability to impart those skills quickly through training. Selection procedures were generally geared to finding the recruits with established skills and higher educational qualifications and allocating them to more technically complex branches of the services. The US Army Air Forces took two-fifths of those who scored highest in the standard Army General Classification test. In Canada, the Air Force took only 90,000 out of 600,000 volunteers using a special visual link trainer designed by medical and psychological experts to distinguish a potential flyer. British recruitment was initially poorly managed, with large numbers of skilled men in roles where their skills were not exploited. Psychological testing was slowly introduced in 1940, and finally, in 1941, a directorate for selection of personnel was set up, modeled on the peacetime National Institute of Industrial Psychology. The new system relied on aptitude testing to ensure that skills acquired in civilian life were properly allocated to the many different military branches. The systems were certainly far from perfect, and they reflected the prevailing class realities. Poorly graded recruits, often with low educational achievements, ended up universally in the infantry. Sometimes training had to be extremely basic. In Italy, thousands of illiterate recruits from the countryside could not tell left from right and had to have a colored band wound round one arm to help them remember which was which. All conscripts underwent basic training, even if they were to serve subsequently in a service or auxiliary branch. Because of the sheer scale of mobilization, the training regimes had to be constructed to match the demand for manpower. The RAF, for example, relied on the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, agreed with the Canadian government in December 1939, under whose auspices 131,000 aircrew from 97 Canadian training schools eventually graduated. When the United States began recruiting in large numbers in 1942, an emergency training system had to be established at 242 different sites. Officer training places expanded from 14,000 in 1941 to 90,000 a year later. Training even extended to some of the 1.6 million illiterates identified by the draft boards, who were to be taught reading, and writing alongside regular military instruction. The most remarkable training program was achieved in the Soviet Union with the decree of 17 September 1941 on universal and obligatory military training of citizens of the USSR, which required all men not yet in the armed forces to attend 110 hours of training courses after work to learn how to handle rifles, mortars, machine guns, and grenades, and how to prepare a military trench.